At a sleek tech company in the heart of the city, a calm, well-dressed black man walks in for a scheduled meeting, but instead of being welcomed, he's insulted, dismissed, and roughly escorted out, mistaken for a delivery driver. What no one realizes is he's the very man they've spent months trying to impress, and by the time they discover the truth, it's already too late. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. The morning Sierra Dynamics would begin its collapse, started like any other. Clean lobby, polished marble, soft jazz humming through the speakers, and staff buzzing about, too busy to notice the storm walking through their front door. Malik Rhodes stood across the street, hands in his pockets, the cold breeze of downtown Chicago tugging lightly at the collar of his charcoal gray cashmere coat. He wasn't wearing a suit, no gold cufflinks, no security detail. Just tailored slacks, handcrafted Oxfords, and a subtle watch only the truly wealthy would recognize. A prototype piece from his own tech lab. At a glance, he looked like a man with taste but no title. And that's exactly what he intended. "Sir, are you sure you don't want me to come in with you?" his driver, a former Marine named Tyrone, asked from behind the wheel of the sleek black Mercedes idling at the curb. Malik's lips curled slightly. Best way to test the temperature of a place is to walk in unannounced. No nameplates, no heads up, just presence. He crossed the street with a calm, steady stride. No rush, no hesitation. Inside Sierra Dynamics, the Monday rush was in full swing. Coffee cups in one hand, phones in the other, executives zipped by the reception area like they owned the world. And then Malik walked in. From behind the reception desk, Emily Grant, a woman in her late 20s with platinum blonde hair tied in a sleek bun, barely looked up from her phone. She tapped away on her screen with those long, acrylic-dipped fingers, her bright red nails clicking against the glass. Her posture didn't change, but her eyes flicked upward just long enough to scan Malik from head to toe. She didn't see a billionaire. She didn't see the founder of Rhodes Tech, a cybersecurity empire with contracts spanning from Wall Street to the Pentagon. No. What she saw was a tall black man in designer casuals who didn't look like he belonged, and that was all she needed. Without breaking her scrawling rhythm, she spoke. "Deliveries go through the service entrance, around back, no loitering in the lobby." Malik paused, not startled, not insulted, simply taking note. Every word, every glance, every assumption. "Good morning," he said, his voice deep and controlled. "I have a 9 a.m. appointment with Mr. Frederick Dean." Emily smirked, finally putting her phone down. She leaned slightly forward, narrowing her eyes as if that might change what she saw. "Name?" "Malik Rhodes." There was a beat of silence. Her brows lifted, not in recognition but in skepticism. "Right," she said with a scoff. "Look, I don't care what name you give. Mr. Dean doesn't take walk-ins, and I highly doubt you're on his calendar. Do I look stupid to you?" Malik remained perfectly still. "If you check the executive calendar, you'll find—" "Nope," Emily cut in sharply. "You can save your little speech, okay? I'm not about to lose my job letting some guy wander in off the street pretending to be someone important. I've worked here 5 years. I know how this works. So again, deliveries in the back or security can escort you out." As if on cue, 2 security guards approached. One heavy-set with a badge that barely clung to his belt. The other tall and mean-looking, the type that took pride in intimidation. Malik didn't flinch. "I'm not here to deliver anything," Malik said again, calm as still water. "You're making a mistake." Emily rolled her eyes so hard it was almost theatrical. "Oh, please. A mistake is forgetting to order oat milk. This is protocol." The taller guard stepped in, voice low and firm. "Sir, I need you to step outside." Malik looked him in the eye. "I'm telling you now. I'm Malik Rhodes. I founded Rhodes Tech. I have a scheduled meeting." The other guard grabbed his arm, hard. Malik's sleeve twisted under the grip, but he didn't resist. The lobby, full of people moments ago, had quieted to a hush. "Let go of my arm," he said evenly. Emily leaned across the counter and hissed, "Maybe you should dress the part if you want to walk into places like this. This ain't the DMV." The crowd began to grow. Whispers floated through the air. Phones lifted for photos. A few interns had gathered near the elevators, frozen mid-sip of their morning lattes. One woman, standing on the mezzanine above, gripped the railing tightly, her jaw set, her eyes furious but silent. She watched everything unfold. As the guards pushed Malik toward the door, he didn't yell. He adjusted the wrinkle in his coat as best he could with his arms still trapped, and said quietly, "Take your hand off me, before this moment becomes the last mistake this company ever makes." But they didn't listen, and Sierra Dynamics didn't know it yet, but they had just thrown out the one man who could have saved them. What followed in the minutes after Malik Rhodes was forced out the door didn't feel like an earthquake, at least not yet. The laughter returned, coffee cups resumed their ascent, and Emily Grant turned back to her phone like nothing unusual had happened. She high-fived a nearby coworker and muttered under her breath, "These people always think they can talk their way into anything." A few chuckles echoed from those close enough to hear, but on the mezzanine above, Tamika Scott hadn't moved. Her grip on the railing was so tight her knuckles had turned white. She had recognized Malik the moment he stepped through the doors. His face was on the cover of Forbes just last month. She had studied his speeches, quoted his algorithms in her graduate thesis. He was one of her heroes, and now she had just watched him get manhandled and humiliated right in front of her. She had wanted to speak up. God, she should have. But that small, familiar voice in the back of her mind whispered all the things women like her heard every time they considered speaking out. "You're lucky to be here. Don't rock the boat. Keep your head down. You're not untouchable." She hated that voice, but it had kept her silent. Downstairs, Emily was still basking in the afterglow of her petty power trip when her co-worker Jennifer arrived to relieve her for the late morning shift. "What did I miss?" Jennifer asked, placing her purse behind the desk. Emily smirked like a child with a secret. "Some guy tried to con his way into a meeting with Mr. Dean, said his name was Malik something." Jennifer's eyes narrowed. "Wait, Malik Rhodes, tall, black, about 40, wore a gray coat and that sleek silver watch?" Emily paused, her confidence flickering. "Yeah, why?" Jennifer's face drained of color. "Emily, that was Malik Rhodes. The Malik Rhodes, the CEO of Rhodes Tech, the company we've been trying to partner with for months. Frederick Dean has been flying out to D.C. just to court him." Emily blinked. No, that's not. He didn't look what, Emily?" Jennifer's voice was sharp now. "Didn't look like a billionaire? Didn't look like someone worth treating with respect?" Emily stammered. "No, I mean, I didn't know. He didn't say he was—" "He did," Jennifer snapped. "You just didn't listen." Across the building, phones began to buzz. Emails pinged. Screens lit up with urgent meeting requests and internal alerts. Upstairs, in the executive conference suite, Frederick Dean, the CEO of Sierra Dynamics, had just stormed out of a call with the Department of Energy, a contract that now hung in the balance, and was now pacing like a man whose world was cracking beneath his feet. How could this happen? He barked at his assistant. Who let him get dragged out like that? "Reception," the assistant said quietly. "And security. But Paul was there too?" Dean froze. "Paul Whitman? He saw it happen?" The assistant nodded grimly. He recognized Rhodes, but he didn't say anything. Dean's eyes darkened. "Get Paul in here, now." Back downstairs, the lobby was no longer just a place for check-ins. It had become a storm cell. Whispers were flying. Names were being named. Screens showed the Forbes profile of Malik with the headline, "The Man Who Could Rewrite Cybersecurity Forever." Someone had already pulled up the security footage, grainy but clear, of Emily's sneering face, the guard's hands gripping Malik's arms, and Paul Whitman walking by in the background with a smirk and saying, "Security can handle these types." Tamika had descended from the mezzanine and quietly ducked into a hallway, her heart pounding. She opened her phone and began typing out a message. To HR, to Dean, to anyone who would listen. But she hesitated. Her eyes fell to the carpet. That voice was back. You speak up now, you might be next. She deleted the draft. In the executive floor, Paul had finally arrived, casual as ever, as if walking into a meeting he knew he'd dominate. Relax, he said, sliding into a chair. It's a misunderstanding. We can spin this. Rhodes is a businessman. He'll understand. Dean stared at him like he was something beneath his shoe. You knew who he was, he said quietly. You saw him, you watched it happen, and you did nothing. Paul scoffed. I didn't know, no. I wasn't sure. And even if I did, why would a guy like that show up alone, unannounced, dressed like... He caught himself too late. Dean stood up slowly. Do you even hear yourself? Paul shifted in his seat. It's not that big a deal. We'll send a gift basket, a statement, maybe a donation. He'll get over it. Dean's voice dropped low. We needed this partnership to survive the next quarter. Without Rhodes Tech's neural integration, we are done, and you handed that deal to our competition with a smile on your face. Silence filled the room like smoke. The email pings were faster now. Someone had leaked the security footage. It was already on Twitter. Back at her desk, Emily sat frozen. Jennifer had long since walked away. Her phone buzzed again. The subject line read, Disciplinary review, urgent, HR note. The camera at the front of the building caught a final image of Malik standing outside, his coat straightened, his face unreadable. He checked his watch, turned, and walked away from Sierra Dynamics without looking back. Inside, no one moved, and above them all, Tamika Scott stared out of her office window, heart pounding, knowing she had just witnessed the fall of an empire that didn't even realize it had already begun. By the time the sun reached its highest point over the Chicago skyline, Sierra Dynamics was already hemorrhaging credibility, and it hadn't even been 4 hours since Malik Rhodes had been shoved out their front doors. But the world moves fast when injustice goes viral. The footage from the lobby, low resolution but damning, had been uploaded to social media by a junior staffer who couldn't stomach what he'd witnessed. Within minutes, it had spread across LinkedIn, Twitter, even Reddit threads with titles like, When Racism Costs You a $1 Billion Deal. The audio wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to catch Emily's voice dripping with sarcasm. Do I look stupid to you? And Paul's passing remark, security can handle these types. The comments exploded with outrage. Thousands of users were tagging Rhodes Tech, demanding a response. Malik, meanwhile, said nothing. No tweet, no press release, no rebuttal. He didn't need one. He had already made his decision hours ago. From his private suite at the Four Seasons, he quietly instructed his legal team to terminate all pending contracts with Sierra Dynamics, including the nearly finalized $800 million 0-cents neural integration partnership that had the potential to redefine national cybersecurity infrastructure. With a few silent keystrokes, he set into motion a collapse that would hit harder than anyone inside Sierra could begin to imagine. Inside the executive floor, chaos was erupting. CEO Frederick Dean stood in front of a wall of monitors showing real-time stock fluctuations. Sierra Dynamics was plummeting. Their valuation had dropped nearly $300 million, 0 cents, in 2 hours. More than just investors were panicking. Government contractors were backing out. 2 major defense clients requested emergency meetings. Internally, department heads were pointing fingers. HR was flooded with whistleblower complaints, many of them freshly typed, including one anonymous report outlining multiple racial microaggressions involving Emily, and another alleging that Paul Whitman had manipulated vendor approvals for kickbacks. Dean turned to his assistant. Get me Malik. I don't care what it takes. I want to talk to him now. The assistant swallowed hard. Sir? He declined your request. He said his decision is final. Dean's face went pale. He what? And his counsel just sent over a formal termination letter. All collaborations are cancelled, effective immediately. At that moment, Paul Whitman burst through the conference room door, his tie loosened and his voice louder than necessary. "Okay, this is getting out of control," he barked, slamming his phone on the table. "We need to put out a statement. Our side of the story. Get legal, get PR, frame this as a misunderstanding blown out of proportion." Dane didn't respond. He simply stared at Paul, seething. "I mean, look," Paul continued, "we're not perfect, okay? But this whole racism angle, come on. That's just online outrage culture. He came in looking like a delivery guy, acted like he owned the place. How were we supposed to know?" His hand slammed the desk so hard it silenced the room. "Because it was your job to know, Paul. You are executive vice president of partnerships, and you watched the only man who could save this company get dragged out like trash, and you said nothing." Paul threw up his hands. "So what? Now everything's my fault?" Dean stepped closer, voice low but furious. "Yes, Paul, it is. And you're done here. Effective immediately." Paul's jaw dropped. "You're firing me?" "I'm firing you before Malik's lawyers come asking who authorized racial profiling in my company." Just then, a legal advisor entered with a stack of printed emails. "You need to see this," she said grimly. She handed Dean a transcript of internal messages between Paul and a vendor from Vanguard Net, Sierra's biggest competitor. The emails detailed potential kickbacks in exchange for sabotaging the Rhodes Tech deal. Dean stared at the paper in silence for a long moment. Then, without looking up, he said, "Get security. Escort him out." Paul exploded. "You're going to take his side over mine? After everything I've done for this company? For you?" Dean didn't answer. The security team entered, and Paul was dragged out in a scene not unlike the one Malik had endured, except this time, no one looked away. Meanwhile, downstairs, Emily Grant sat in HR, her makeup smeared, eyes red, trying to explain why she never checked the executive calendar, why she raised her voice, why she didn't mean it like that. The HR rep, expressionless, slid a copy of the footage across the table. "We've reviewed your actions. Your behavior violated company policy, ethics code, and basic professionalism. Your employment here is terminated, effective immediately." Emily stood up too fast, knocking over her chair. "You're firing me because he got offended? You're ruining my life because I made one mistake?" The HR rep didn't flinch. "No, you're being terminated because you made every mistake." Outside the glass windows, news vans were pulling up. Reporters had caught wind of the scandal, and the headlines were multiplying. "Racial profiling costs tech giant its future." "Malik Rhodes walks away." "Wall Street walks too." Upstairs, Dean stood alone in the conference room, staring at the city skyline. The company he had spent 20 years building was unraveling hour by hour, all because his team couldn't recognize greatness unless it wore the right suit. And across town, in the quiet of his office, Malik Rhodes sat at his desk, reviewing a new proposal from a rising AI firm out of Atlanta, run entirely by women of color. Without fanfare, he picked up his phone and dialed. "Let's talk. I think we can build something better than what I just destroyed." The building that once bore the cold, sharp lettering of Sierra Dynamics now stood stripped and silent, its massive logo gone, its glass doors shut to the public and its parking garage mostly empty. A month after its collapse, the company's assets were auctioned at a fraction of their worth. Real estate investors circled like vultures, looking to gut the space and flip it for profit. But one bidder didn't come in with a real estate firm or a private equity group. Malik Rhodes came along. He didn't wear a suit to the auction either. His offer was precise and generous, not because he needed the space, but because he knew exactly what he was going to do with it. Within 6 weeks, the lights were back on. The lobby was gutted, the reception desk gone. The rows of sterile white LED panels were replaced with warm, energy-efficient lighting. Color filled the walls. Murals of diverse young coders, quotes from pioneers of innovation. The building was reborn as the Rhodes Innovation Hub, a center for education, mentorship, and real-world tech training for underserved youth from Black, Latino, and immigrant communities. Inside those same halls, where security once dragged him out, Now children ran through wearing backpacks, holding robotics kits and laughing like they had just entered the future. In one of the classrooms, Tamika Scott stood at the head of a group of middle schoolers explaining how artificial intelligence could be used to help detect wildfires before they spread. Her voice was clear, her posture confident. She wore a lanyard that read Director of Curriculum, Rhodes Hub. Tamika had gotten the call 2 days after Sierra's collapse. Malik had remembered her eyes, how she hadn't looked away, how her silence had been louder than any defense. He hadn't blamed her for staying quiet. He understood the pressure she lived under. But now he had given her a new role, not just as a leader, but as an architect of what came next. When she arrived at the newly minted Rhodes Hub, she cried. Not because of the job title, not even because of the office with her name etched on the glass, but because for the first time in her career, someone had looked past her skin and past her fear and seen her potential as something worth building around. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew only local press. Malik didn't want a media circus. He wanted results. "We don't need to prove anything to anyone," he told the small crowd of parents, kids, and educators. "We're not here to perform excellence. We're here to create it." Inside, the curriculum was hands-on and unapologetically rigorous. Kids built apps, launched drones, coded in Python by the end of their first semester. Every instructor came from a background that reflected the students. Former engineers, coders, scientists who had fought to find space in an industry that often refused to make room. Now they were making that space, together. Malik moved through the building quietly most days. He didn't need applause or recognition. He sat with students. He asked questions. He donated personal tech tools from Rhodes Tech to each classroom. In the old executive suite that used to belong to Frederick Dean, Malik had installed a media lab. The view was the same, but the mission had changed. The few journalists who did cover the story called it poetic. Malik never commented on Sierra by name. He didn't have to. The transformation spoke for itself. What once was a fortress of exclusion was now an engine of opportunity. One afternoon, as Malik stood outside watching a group of teenagers fly their newly designed drones in the courtyard, Tamika approached him. "Do you ever think they'll understand?" she asked softly. "The people who let all this fall apart?" Malik looked at her, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. "They don't have to understand. They just have to watch." That night, a former Sierra Dynamics employee, one of the few who hadn't been let go in disgrace, stood across the street and watched the lights of Rhodes Hub glow bright against the skyline. She snapped a photo, added the caption, "From ashes he built a lighthouse." Inside, Malik stood at the back of an evening workshop, observing in silence. A young girl, no older than 12, stood up and presented her mobile app that helped her grandmother remember her medications. Her voice trembled at first, but gained strength with every word. The room erupted in applause. Malik leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching the moment unfold. Not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had once been told he didn't belong. Now he was making sure no child in that building would ever feel the same. 1 year after the fall of Sierra Dynamics, the name Rhodes Hub had become more than just a center. It was a movement. From Chicago, it expanded to Atlanta, then to Houston, each new location powered by community partnerships, local educators, and Malik Rhodes' uncompromising vision. He refused federal funding, turned down press tours, and declined multiple awards, stating simply, "I'm not here to be celebrated. I'm here to change how the system works." At Rhodes Hub, no one asked what school you came from, what zip code you lived in, or who your parents were. The only question that mattered was, what do you want to build? Hundreds of kids had already passed through the first cohort. Young black and brown students who now spoke fluently about quantum computing, blockchain, and machine learning. Many were already interns at Rhodes Tech before turning 17. A few had already won national innovation grants. But outside the walls of Progress, the world continued to remember. Emily Grant was now working a late-night customer service job at a telecom call center in the suburbs, answering phones for irate customers who called her everything under the sun. Every day she clicked past LinkedIn job postings she once would have considered beneath her. Now she barely got callbacks. The footage of her in the lobby had never really disappeared. It always resurfaced, viral again every few months like a bad penny. She submitted an application to Rhodes Hub's administrative department once, under a new name. Tamika rejected it without hesitation. As for Paul Whitman, the former VP's downfall was slower but more painful. After the whistleblower investigations, the SEC stepped in. The emails linking him to Vanguard Net were damning. He had sabotaged internal deals, funneled funds through shell accounts, and even blocked diversity initiatives that might have shifted the company's image in time. Now he was under federal indictment, his assets frozen, his legal team thinning by the week. He blamed Malik, of course, but Malik never once mentioned his name in public. That silence cut deeper than any accusation ever could. Meanwhile, Rhodes Tech surged. Their latest AI-integrated defense system, built in collaboration with Black and Latino scientists across 5 states, received national recognition, but Malik didn't attend the ceremony. He sent Tamika instead. "This is your win," he told her. "Go show them what brilliance looks like." She did, gracefully, fiercely, with every ounce of dignity they'd once tried to strip from her. In Washington, policymakers had begun to take notice. The success of Rhodes Hub had reached Capitol Hill, and Malik was invited to speak before the House Committee on Technology and Education. He refused the first 3 times. Only after receiving a personal letter from a congresswoman whose son had graduated from Rhodes Hub Houston did he agree. When he walked into the chamber, he wore no tie, no pin, no branded logo, just the same quiet presence that had always set him apart. He spoke for 8 minutes. No script, no slides, just truth. "I didn't build Rhodes Hub to fix a company," he said. "I built it because too many people in this country think brilliance only comes in one color, from one neighborhood, with one accent. That's not true. Respect isn't optional, neither is accountability, and if we want a future worth living in, we better start treating people like they belong before they have to prove it." The room fell silent, then came the applause. Back in Chicago, the original Rhodes Hub glowed like a beacon against the skyline. Inside, students were still coding, teachers were still mentoring, and the mission hadn't slowed. On the 10th floor, once the executive suite of Sierra Dynamics, now hung a simple bronze plaque. It read, "This space is dedicated to everyone who was told they didn't belong. You do. Always." Malik stood there one evening, alone, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on that plaque. Behind him, Tamika approached. "There's a group of students from Oakland visiting tomorrow," she said. "They asked if you'd speak." Malik smiled softly. "Only if they promise to interrupt me when I talk too long?" she chuckled. "That won't be a problem." He turned to face the window, watching the lights stretch across the city. "You know," he said, "they tried to write me out of the room that day. Thought I didn't belong. Now the room is mine. But I'm not keeping it. I'm giving it away." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting gold across the concrete and glass, it was clear that Malik Rhodes had done more than win. He had redefined what winning looked like. Not with revenge, but with resolve. Not with bitterness, but with legacy.